The Fitness Industry Technology Summit has fallen victim to COVID-19 and the lockdown of Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide at the moment. Now, we are finalising the details for the new event, which will be in February 2022. Once the venue reopens, we can confirm details with us, and then we can let you know of the exact dates of what is going to be happening. The amazing news is that over the course of the next 3 months, every speaker from the 2021 summit will be delivering their presentation exclusive to the delegates for 2021, plus any new delegates for 2022. This means in February 2022, we will have a brand new program of speakers. So you can register now at fitnessindustrytechsummit.com.au for the 2021 virtual sessions, plus the 2022 face-to-face event. Now, I'm really excited, though, to confirm 2 of the summit panels we are opening the entire industry to at absolutely no cost. Next Thursday at 3 o'clock, we will have Ben Lucas from Flow Athletic, Sean O'Shea from Performance PT, Andrew Pears from Fitness and Lifestyle Group, Troy Morgan from Willow's Health and Fitness, and Adala Bolto from Zardi Training. They will be sharing what they have learned over the last 18 months about the consumer, the prospects, and your members. These owners have been in the trenches just like you, many of them working their butts off just to survive. So join the panel and learn from your peers. Today, though, our panel will be able to aggregate many industry feelings, trends, and sentiments over the past 18 months. After this panel, you will be able to see what areas of the business you should be working on because your competition already is, or what opportunities are possible as there is no one offering these services or products in your marketplace. Now, this panel is a wealth of knowledge, experience, and they've got plenty of data to back up what they're going to be talking about. So get your pens ready, because I know there is going to be lots to learn today. Welcome to the panel, Ian Mullane from KeepMe.ai, our platinum partner, Emmett Williams from MyZone, one of our gold partners, Matt George from Xbody Australia, also a gold partner, Tony DeLead from Wellness Solutions, a silver partner, and Owen Bowling from the Wellness Program, a bronze partner. Gentlemen, great to have you here. So let's start introductions. Emmett, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Hey, JT, and thank you for having us all on the panel. Really appreciate it. Emmett Williams, I'm one of the partners in MyZone. As many of your listeners will know, I moved back from the US about 6 months ago. I spent 10 years over there getting MyZone off the ground, and now happy to be back here in sunny Australia.
And you're in Queensland, so you're not in lockdown. You've got free reign to do whatever you like.
That's right, although I'm on enough WhatsApp feeds to feel the pain from Victoria and New South Wales.
Tony, tell us about yourself.
Justin, currently sitting in the COVID capital of Australia, Bondi Beach. So that's where it all began. We don't like to take credit for that. By way back, recently have a company called Wellness Solutions. Used to have a company called Fitness First many years ago, which I started in 2000. And Wellness Solutions is a company we've been involved with now for 5 years. About to launch, we were supposed to launch two days ago, our new Blue Sky franchise called Club W, which was a wellness franchise. So as we're talking about all things wellness or some things wellness, this is, if you get a chance, look at wellnesssolutions.com.au and you'll get a glimpse of the future as it relates to wellness facilities.
Awesome. Welcome, Tony. Matt George, great to have you. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks, JT. Matt George, Australian Director of Xbody, the world's leading EMS, which is electrical muscle stimulation devices. We've got over 5,000 studios across 86 countries. We're delivering 35,000 sessions a day. And I'm really excited to be at the start line of this growth industry here in Australia and to be partnering with you guys at the Technology Summit. So thanks for having us.
Pleasure, sir. Owen Bowling, also from Queensland, with free reign to do whatever he likes, no rubbing it in. Owen, tell us about you and what your experience is.
Thanks, JT. So look, I've been in the industry since 2002. Spent about 8 years as a personal trainer and then developed a suspension training strap product that I would argue is better than the main strap product that was out there at the time. And spent 10 years building that up with international education and distribution in 25 countries. About 3 years ago, I put together a small team to develop what is now the wellness program. So we've been working on building an artificial intelligence entity to act as a gym assistant, gym coach, gym member support platform. We're going live with trials in Australia in probably 2 weeks' time. So it's been an interesting process, and I've had to learn a lot. I'm a non-technical founder. I'm not a AI developer, but I've got a good team around me. But I'm really passionate about the industry and how much more impact we can have. So that's what's driven most of my business interests in this space.
Excellent, Owen. And from keepme.ai, the boss, Ian Mullane, thank you for getting up early. For those that are unaware, Ian is based in the UK and it is 7:10, I think, in the morning there. So, Ian, you look fantastic for this early in the morning.
Oh, JT, you're such a gentleman. Yeah, thanks, JT. And yeah, and glad to say it's actually a very sunny summer UK morning here as well. So as JT says, I'm founder and CEO of KeepMe. KeepMe is an AI-powered CRM for fitness operators. My background's actually fintech, especially around predictive analytics. That's what I was doing for well over a decade. But I was also the founder of one of Singapore's best-known fitness clubs called Vanda.fit for 12 years. It was this experience that saw me bring those two interests together to build KeepMe, which now has a customer base across 13 countries, including Australia.
Thank you, sir. It's great having you on board, and thank you all of you for your amazing support. But more importantly, we're eternally grateful for your patience for us to get a live event off the ground. So thank you for all of your support over the last year and now another 6 months. Now, let me start off. I want to do a whip around and get an idea from each of you, because you all have loads of experience and data on consumers of your particular products. What have you seen as trends or industry sort of commonalities, needs, wants as a direct result of various lockdowns from the consumers of your products? So why don't we start with Emmett with that one?
Yeah, good question, JT. I'll share 3 metrics with you. The first one is unique to my zone, given the perspective that we've got, and that is the percentage of workouts done inside a gym versus the percentage of workouts done outside a gym. Leading into COVID, so let's call it leading into February, March of 2020, 60% of all my zone users did a workout inside a gym, and 40% of their workouts were done outside the gym. Now, in that first month of lockdown, particularly March and April, it went to 0% inside a gym, right? But then it recovered from there, and it recovered to 40% inside a gym and 60% of your workouts outside a gym, right? And that number has sustained throughout 2020 and now into 2021. And that is in the face of gyms opening up. So my message here is that your members were always doing workouts outside the gym. It wasn't just the gym that they worked out at. They were doing cardio, going for runs, bike rides and whatnot. But that trend is changing. And as the rest of the world does open up and the vaccines permeate, we'll see if it snaps back to 60-40 in favor of the gym, or if it meets somewhere in the middle at perhaps 50-50. Now, as we came into COVID, our average user participated in 1.6 exercise challenges per year, right? And an exercise challenge might go for 4, 5, or 6 weeks. So the mean average was 1.6. Throughout 2020 and 2021, that mean average has gone from 1.6 to 2.6, which may not look like a big move because it's a small number, but it's in fact a 60% jump on participation and involvement in exercise challenges. So that's interesting. And the third stat I'll share with you is around the World Health Organization. You see, we measure activity based on the World Health Organization guideline of 150 minutes of moderate activity or 75 minutes worth of vigorous activity or a blend of the two. And for the 10 years leading up to COVID, well, let me go back, the 9 years leading up to COVID that we've been incorporated, our metric has told us that 48% of our users would exceed that hurdle and the balance would miss. Since COVID, that number has jumped from 48% to 57%, which again, the raw number might look small, but it's almost a 20% increment. And what I'll conclude with is this point here, that our customers, our collective customers, all have a job to be done. And that job to be done, I believe, is this. Help me, is what they say, help me start and sustain an exercise routine. And we all do that in a different way. There's a real orchestra of activity that helps them achieve that. But when the gyms were on lockdown or when the gyms were restricted, they turned back to our technology and said, you know what, I know I need to do exercise, but I'm not intrinsically motivated. I need a little bit of extrinsic help here to get me going. And they upped the challenges and the gamification, which ended up increasing the success rate as it relates to the World Health Organization. So yeah, really, really interesting insights.
Thanks, Emmett. Great data. And let's now go to another data collector, Ian, obviously with Keep Me having a retention platform as well. What can you tell us about the consumer's behavior?
Obviously, in my case, consumers are the operators themselves because they're my primary customers. You know, it's mixed. It's mixed throughout the world, and that's because we've all experienced very different situations relative to lockdowns. Understand what's going on in Australia at the moment, but we've probably had the most severe aspects of it. So what behaviors have changed has been after the first lockdown, there was very little proactive activity. It was just a case people were viewing things as business reopening. And with business reopening, they just went back to the same type of work that they'd done previously. What we've seen in subsequent lockdowns is a very different behavior. There seems to be a much larger understanding of where the risk lies in the reopening relative to their existing members. There's a lot more modeling done around understanding to what level they've got risk within their membership and how many of them are likely to come back. And then one of the things which we didn't see initially, which we have seen quite considerably now, is a huge increase in member engagement. Or sorry, I should put out operators looking to engage the member. After the first lockdown, there was very low activity in that area. We did small element research internally just to take a look at the amount of social media activity that the brands, the top brands in the United States did during the lockdown period. And without exception, they were all down between 40 and 70% than during a normal operational period, whereby logically those engagements should have been increasing considerably when the only way they had of making those engagements was through the digital means. That's been learned. There is absolutely no doubt. And I am seeing lockdown member journeys as actual channels that are being put together. And I'm seeing engagements which are comprehensive, regardless of the status, to make sure that when they do open up, the first engagements people are getting are not around the safety measures, but have all the other aspects of them as well.
Great insights. Thanks, Ian. Matt, having your product based in Germany, you must have seen some interesting data coming out of Germany and then flowing through even to your own club here in Australia. What have you seen from the consumer and their use of your product?
Well, I think basically, firstly, our two business models are basically the in-house, in-shop in the gym model, and also our standalone micro studios. And globally, most of our studios were shut down last year. And born out of necessity, we realized we needed to take EMS training to the consumer. So we actually launched a mobile tablet option, and our sales in Germany, our biggest market, actually outstripped 2019 in 2020. The sales were huge. From a studio point of view, they were given a lifeline and be able to continue to work with their clients by and large. From a consumer's point of view, we've really seen that you know, in generally, consumers are moving away from the bigger clubs and metro areas, and they're taking up different exercise options at home or closer to home. And they're really demanding more convenience, accessibility, and time effectiveness. So EMS certainly fits that build with our 20-minute sessions.
Owen and Tony, you've got lots of breadth across the industry. Again, looking at just the consumer at this point, Owen, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so JT, I'd probably speak a little bit more from the Crank It business, because with the wellness program being an AI startup in development, we don't have a lot of customers to gather that data from. But from a Crank It perspective, you know, a lot of our business was commercial, and very quickly that turned off. Now, I can remember very clearly, it was a Sunday in March. I'd just come back from the USA, and we heard the news that there was going to be these lockdowns of gyms, and I think I was on the phone nonstop for about 3 days, and we pivoted and put out a consumer product and saw really good uptake of that. That's now led to consumer retail distribution overseas. And what that really showed me, and we saw it with all levels of the industry in terms of suppliers catering to consumers' demand for fitness, meeting them where they were, was that if you were proactive, there was opportunity. But if you sat back and waited, then it was pretty easy to miss the boat. And I think it didn't matter what sector of the industry you were in, proactivity was the thing that really stood you in good stead across the board.
Yeah, great. And Tony, what about for you? You just need to go off mute.
Okay, now you got me. Sorry. Because it relates to this big word called wellness, which I know is what you wanted me to touch on, and what does it look like? I guess the first question is, from a consumer perspective, as you I think alluded to earlier, the word wellness is something that's resonating more than it ever has. The question is, for consumers, what does it look like? And also for operators and for suppliers, what does it look like? Because it's kind of like fitness. It can be everything from what Matt does to what, you know, each of you do. It's all components of fitness. And wellness exists in many different ways, shapes, or form. As we look ahead, in our respective industries or in our respective fields, how do we evolve this hybrid model? You hear the word hybrid being bandied around a lot. There's a lot of people are already fixed, have rents and have obligations to a big box. So how do you make that box work? How do you bolt on the hybrid piece to support the box? How do you increase the number of members you have and or increase the number of dollars per member? So there's all these different conversations around what are we all going to look like as an industry in, say, the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And there are some stark realities. One is that if you are going to survive and, God forbid, thrive in this post-COVID or this, let's call it COVID world or the new COVID, whatever we want to call it, because everybody's trying to get their head around what's it going to be. But, you know, lifestyle, the business we are in, all of us, is thankfully a business or something that people want. And people increasingly will spend their wealth to keep or improve their health. You know, they've recognized in these tough times that how they live and where they spend their money, it's not about getting, you know, drunk every Friday night at the bar anymore. When you go away on a holiday, it's not about wasting away in Margaritaville. It's now about balancing that with, you know, lifestyle and movement and exercise. And so the great thing for us as an industry is the focus of pretty much everybody out there is living better and living longer and all the rest of it. So we are in a prime position. So back to the word wellness, reality is in what all of us have been doing, and I've been in the industry this year 40 years, but it's been in the fitness industry. No matter which country you go to, there are, I think Australia sits right near the top as to the number of people belong to some kind of fitness facility, whether it be a boutique, a fitness center or whatever, and it still sits at under 20%. You know, and then it's downhill from there to companies like India and China that have less than 1%, or China maybe a bit higher. So, but the other 80% are not necessarily looking for fitness, but they want to be well. And how do you deliver that? And how do you get that into your facilities, or how do you develop a hybrid model? And again, whether you're at one end of the spectrum, we'll go back to the club's Lifetime Family Fitness. largest, I think, publicly listed company in terms of revenue today, bigger than Planet and all the rest. And they've gone full blown into wellness. What does it look like in their facilities? Lots of spa, lots of, one-on-one, lots of nutrition, lots of things that are not traditionally the realms of fitness centers. You go to the other end of the spectrum, and not that I'm saying this is at the low end, but let's say to Planet Fitness, one of the clubs that is still booming and thriving in these tough times. And where do they make their cream in those clubs? A lot of people don't realize it's on their black card memberships. What do you get in a black card membership? You get something called they call it spa/wellness offerings, and call it a hydro massage chair, call it a spray tanning bed, or in the States, a regular tanning bed. And they have, in Australia, 70 to 80% of their members get upsold to the black card membership, which is 60% more revenue. So not only do they attract an audience that they are not already getting, but their existing audience is paying a premium. So again, tying back to what is our industry going to look like, particularly on the club level. So each of us has got a different, none of us here is, I'm just looking at club operators, a part of me, that's my background. I think maybe Matt, you may have had a club background, and I'm not sure maybe the rest of you did. But, reality is there's a lot of these boxes in Australia in particular right now that are starving because, they're struggling to figure out if the landlord's going to collect the rent, or trying to figure out how to not pay, as much rent. But reality is they're on the leases, so they've got to have to deal with what they have, as well as getting the hybrid. So anyway, lots of different interesting thoughts as it relates to what wellness, how it can be incorporated, and what can it look like in the club of, for the next 5 years. So,
Tony, I want to dive into wellness in a moment. I'm going to come back to you on that. Ian?
Yeah, just to follow on, I think, to what Tony said there, which I think is completely correct. What has changed in the last 12 months is the consumer's understanding of wellness as well. They've been hit with a media barrage around the subject, which is a logical follow-on from what's been happening around the pandemic. So, your average consumer has a much better understanding of some of even the key physiological aspects of their life. Along, for instance, how many of them knew what SpO2 was beforehand, right? Nowadays, that's something which we all know. But in all reality, we're now dealing with a consumer that doesn't just see 3 trips to the gym a week as giving them the wellness that they require. They understand that's going to have nutrition, it's going to have recovery, it's going to have sleep, it's going to have hydration. And another point which Tony makes really well there is that when you look at the penetration in the markets globally, and as you quite correctly say, Australia is very much at the high end in these aspects, has been one of the very mature and sophisticated markets. We've not seen any increase in penetration in there in years, and we're not going to see any increase in penetration either until something fundamentally changes. And the reason behind that is simple. Populations in the Western are aging. They're aging quite considerably, and what we're finding is that we have got more people over 65 than we've ever had in history before, and we don't have product that services to that market. That will come back to the wellness aspect of it again. And then I think another point, which is kind of controversial if you want to look at it that way, is we've had the rise, and you guys haven't had it to this degree yet, of the digital player. Your Pelotons is a good example. Well, I actually think that the introduction into the market of those are going to affect wellness quite considerably. Because between them and Apple Fitness and Amazon and Google, we've now got some of the finest consumer marketing organizations in the planet selling fitness and wellness. And Apple's not after our market. We're a rounding error in total to just their iPhone business. They're after the wellness marketplace. And currently, what they're doing a really good job of is getting some of the messaging that we would have struggled as individual entities to get out into the wider marketplace. And finish off with Apple as the example there, they've got over 1 billion customers, and they've got the capacity to message far beyond what we would have, even as an industry as a whole. So I think on that side of things, the wellness growth, the wellness education is going to drive a great deal more people to the door of us fitness operators, and that's the positive aspect.
Ian, can I mention there, Ian, was Peloton. Yesterday, it was announced that Les Mills, Asia Pacific, you can now do Les Mills on demand if you have a Telstra TV. Telstra being probably our number 1 telco in the country. Fascinating.
JT,
Evan, I want to come to you. You deal with components. Yep.
Sorry, can I just jump on what Ian said to that point about Peloton? They also came out yesterday and announced that they've done a deal with United Health, right, which is one of the biggest health insurance groups in the United States, to offer Peloton membership to all those souls, as they call them, all those members for one entire year. So we talk about wellness, and Peloton are going to market through the health insurance companies. And we all know that that has been the holy grail for 10 years now, 15 years now, and they announced the deal overnight.
And just because I want to jump on the Peloton train, they've also announced that they're exploring Peloton Gaming. So instead of it being a live class, you've got a flywheel that you're interactively following along. So you can see, and I think I heard them say about 2 weeks ago that their strategic objective is to own at-home strength, which is not what they're doing right now with cycling. And so you like, these guys are coming into this space in a big way. And one of the things for operators that we need to understand is that, you know, are they going to get the penetration that really competes with this? That's hard to say, but they're going to be a force that we have to understand, and that we either have to complement, work with, integrate with, figure out where we fit in terms of the user and what they want to do with that type of service. It's a premium service. It'll probably become cheaper over time, but you know, watch that space carefully.
So Emmett, you deal with a lot of gym owners around the world. What have you seen as trends from gym owners over the last 18 months? Other than panicking, pulling their hair out and wondering what the hell is going to happen to their business, what else have you seen?
Okay, let me start broad, and then I'll bring it in. From a broad perspective, there's a growing problem out there, and we all know it, and that is that due to COVID, consumers are putting on a lot of weight. And in fact, this week, the American Psychological Association came out with a survey, and they showed that 45% of Americans, I know this is an international stat, put on more weight than they thought during COVID. But of those that put on more weight, guess what the average amount of weight was?
5 pounds.
Okay, let's turn it into kilograms of 2.5 kilograms. 13 kilograms was the average. And this survey was done with the GPOP, the general population, right? So people listening to this might be in the middle class, the affluent class. This survey was done on the GPOP, so people that you may or may not be friends with, right? They're putting on weight, and the top 10 percentile from that survey put on 22 kilograms during COVID. So the problem is really growing. That's on that side of the equation. Then if you have a look at some of the big brands out there, in fact, Jefferies, which is an investment bank out of the US, have a fitness traffic index, I think they call it. And what they're reporting is that gyms this month gone, so let's call it, I think this stuff was done up to the end of the first week of July, gyms are seeing attendances which are only 5 to 10% off the prior corresponding period in 2019. There is a big brand, I won't mention their name because I don't think I was supposed to see the report, but they're reporting 93% of peak before COVID. So the gyms are full. However, the Bank of America came out and just announced this a few weeks ago, that they've looked at the credit cards and the bank accounts around the United States, and aggregate gym revenue is at 67% of pre-COVID highs. So what does this tell you? It tells you that the core members that used to pay you and used to attend are paying you and are attending, but the members that used to pay you and not attend, right, let's call them sleepers, are now not paying and they're still not attending, right? So there's a chasm forming, and our challenge, I guess I would frame it, is how do we engage that group again? Because let's face it, from an economic perspective, those sleepers were the ones that paid something called operating profit or EBITDA, and they're very, very important if they're not there. Now, I'm not saying we want them to sleep, but from a numbers perspective, that's where they're at. Now, to bring it in on MyZone, what we saw in 2020 was a lot of Zoom, of course, right? Zoom and live classes. So what we did was we pivoted and created a scenario where you could have Zoom on one side of the screen, MyZone on the other side of the screen, and work out in your lounge room. And the uptake for that throughout 2020 was great. In 2021, however, we've seen the trend move. And so we had to pivot again and create what's known as MZ Remote Plus, not here to plug it, but it's basically on-demand content that Tony's been talking about. And we've plugged that into the MyZone smartphone app, because operators are saying to us, look, we can see what Apple Fitness Plus are doing. We can see what Peloton and all the others are doing. And we know that we can't compete with them on a global level because their addressable market is the entire world. And the capital that they use to go after that addressable market expects large markets with a low likelihood of success. It's that venture capital, high risk, high return type of thing. Whereas these gym operators are sitting there saying, look, I know I have to compete with them, but my competitive advantage is that I'm local, I'm analog, I'm the local guy down the gym, and I can give you a high five, and I can give you equipment, and I can give you programming. But when you look outside my gym to look at virtual solutions just to supplement your week, as I said earlier off the top, 60% of workouts are done outside the gym, right? So when you look outside to do something, you don't have to look past what I'm doing. And I don't have to compete with Peloton or SoulCycle and have, instructors out of Manhattan on $1 million a year, which is a true stat, right? SoulCycle do pay some of their instructors up to $1 million a year. They don't have to do that, but they need something that's good enough. And that's where the virtual on-demand solution is working for us.
Matt, you're in regional New South Wales, where, of course, you're kind of lambasted with COVID, even though you probably don't even have it or never have had it. You deal with a lot of regional clubs. Over the last 18 months, what have you seen trend-wise with the regional gym owner?
Look, I think it's a trend throughout the globe as well, not just regionally. There's definitely been a shift toward just wanting to feel good rather than the just looking good. And this shift towards wellness is something that's not just confined to the cities, but it's something everyone's after. So, in keeping in theme with what everyone else has been talking about, we've all seen some great offerings with wellness or outdoor training areas or mind-body programming that can really add value to their membership and give them something that they're currently not getting in their traditional membership. So the best operators I've seen are really refusing to be defined as just belonging to the fitness industry, and they are branching out into wellness, but also health, beauty, rehab. They're looking at getting EPs and physios in, and they're using technology to improve their services and membership engagement. So look, I just think it's really important that we continue to reconstruct our market boundaries and stop just competing for that same old 15% of the population, and looking at how you can differentiate and find that different shop-in-shop offering or service to improve the value that you're giving to your member and offering something different to your competitors.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I'd like to now spend time with each of you going in particularly to your products, because your products are all tech-based. So let's go to Tony first up. Like we've all said, wellness is part of the language of Australians now. As Ian said, it's in mainstream media. We all get it. Do gyms get it though, Tony? Does the average gym owner get what wellness is? And then can they then add that to their suite of products?
Generally, they're just struggling with getting their head around it. I think the word that you hear around the gyms more than wellness these days is recovery. And I think that word is more appropriate to their traditional market, the fitness market. They want to go hard and then recover. And whether recover means sitting in a cryotherapy or an ice bath or all kinds of different devices, some of which straddle across to the wellness. Our thing is wellness for everybody every day. We are trying to get to the other 80%. Matt, you talked about a box within a box. We're talking to a couple of significant operators in the US, and we're trying to take some of their redundant spaces. And this one in particular has moved away from childcare in clubs, which a lot of the industry have, but they've left with fairly significant childcare spaces. They run in meters from 200 to 500 square meters. We're talking a big chain of big clubs. So we are talking about developing the box within the box, and fortunately, a lot of these places have outside entrances. So you get the other 80%, what I call the forgotten generation, and it's the baby boomers, Ian, that you referred to. A lot of people don't realize in this country and in most Western countries, there are nearly as many people turning 55 every day as there are turning 25. And guess what? They control 80% of the money, and they will spend that wealth to protect their health. Yes, the millennials and the young people are more more inclined to get into fitness. It's as part of what you have to do when you're at my age, and I sit right in the middle of the baby boomer, those born between 1946 and 1964. It's all about how do we live another 20 years well. And when you get the people my age who have never ever been into a fitness center in their lives, and there are 80% of people my age that have never set foot inside any kind of fitness facility ever, and they never will. But they do want to live in the traditional fitness. Now, will they go to something called a wellness center? Well, that has to be defined yet, because there's lots of different brands that are positioning themselves as different types of wellness centers, but most of them at the moment still, I think, are focused on the bringing wellness to the fitness people in the form of recovery. You know, our thing is, how do you break the mold a little? And whether it be a club within a club, and whether you have, instead of live Les Mills teaching, as they have in 20,000 clubs, the live RPM and the live body pump, how do you stick that stuff on a screen? And Justin, you talked about one of the speakers is going to be on with us in a few days, being Troy from Willows. And Willows has now just installed his third big screen in his club. He's got a dedicated spin room that he does nothing but on screen. And he said to me a few days ago, he said, the fascinating bit of feedback is, he said the number of people are going to do spin classes now that had never gone before. And it was because there's no instructor there looking at them and sort of them sitting in fear that they're going to get pointed at, that the instructor sort of says, you know, you need to lift your bum up higher or lean forward a bit more or whatever it is. So he's developing a whole different market of people who used to be uncomfortable and intimidated and just weren't really feeling good about live instructors. Now, whether you put that in a separate box and have a couple of virtual rooms, which is what he's done, or immersive rooms as we call it, put whether it be mind, body, breathe, meditation, stretch as part of recovery, or focused, you know, body pump or spin. And you start to attract a different audience. And then, of course, you've got wellness pods, as we call them, whether it be infrared with meditation inside, or, you know, I talked before about hydro massage, which has swept the industry in the United States in their recovery areas. Or we have something called the breathing and meditation chair, which has been getting a lot of traction. But it creates a different environment. And then little quiet rooms where you can have your own private sessions on a screen. So that's on demand with only one or two people. And we've even curated things like the lights you put in there and the scents that you can push out. So we've created environments that just haven't existed before, but it is very comfortable for the other 80%. That's the focus for the future. How can we as an industry attract people that we haven't traditionally been attracting, rather than fighting over that existing percentage that is, I think Ian said, it's only growing just incrementally, and it will keep growing because there's more younger people jumping in. But the boomers, those people 50 and beyond, is the massive bulge that want to be well. They don't want to be fit. Having a six-pack is no longer, you know, something they aspire to. But
Tony, how important is well? Tony, how important is the environment? You just talked then about lights, scent, and I know with Troy's, he doesn't have a tiny screen. He's got a screen that Troy takes up the entire wall to create a real ambience and experience. How important is the environment from a tech perspective for us?
Well, look, again, we'll go back to Troy. He's got the same content as thousands of clubs have got. So he's just wrapped it differently. He's put in the bigger screen. He's put in the nicer lights. He hasn't put in the scent, but he even has curtains there. So he creates a cinematic experience. So, you know, I've said all along, it's not about the steak, it's about the sizzle that sells the steak. This is an example of Adrian's being proactive and putting up what a room can look like. And you put whatever content you want on there, whether it be spin content, body pump, recovery content. Flash up a few more, Adrian, while you're doing it. So this is just examples of what a room that has lights, bigger screen. That's only a smaller screen, but Troy has mega screens. And these things, and the wonderful thing from a club operator's perspective, the biggest cost we have in a club being labor, well, it's gone. Once you pay a one-time subscription fee, and Les Mills has amazing instructors. We have a brand called Move, and we like to think we've got very good instructors as well. And that's, I think, the industry is moving in that direction to non-intimidating or less intimidating that appeals to the other 80%, whether it goes into a box within a box that Matt talked about, or you keep it as somewhat separate, or you can integrate it in your own club, but get more members or get more dollars per member, which is what we're all trying to do.
Great insight. Thanks, Tony, for that. Emmett, let's go to MyZone. From your data, gamification, Owen talked about it before with Peloton. How important is gamification around retention and the power of MyZone in that model?
Yeah, look, gamification has its part to play. But first of all, what we need to do is break the members into two groups: intrinsically motivated and extrinsically motivated. Intrinsically motivated people don't need gamification. They enjoy the process. It's part of their lifestyle. If they relocated to another town next week, guess what? Joining a gym would be one of the first things that they would do, even before finding a school for their children, right? They'd find a gym and they'd get booked in. And we can all relate with that, right? Because most of the people on this call would do the same thing. But most members are not intrinsically motivated. Most of them need a little bit of extrinsic motivation to get them going. And we all know that members yo-yo. So they go through phases where they'll engage well and then they'll come off. And gamification needs to be there to catch them when they come down and shoot them back up again. So to answer your question, we know that when MyZone users are in a MEPS challenge, MEPS is our point system, a point system based on intensity and time, and it helps democratize the effort put into exercise. We know that when they're in a challenge, and earlier on the call I mentioned that they've gone, our members have gone, or users have gone from 1.6 challenges a year to 2.6, they work out 33% more than when they're not in a challenge, right? So they're engaged, they're playing the video game, and they're putting in more effort. And we all know that an engaged member putting in more effort speaks volume for routine and habit, and therefore retention and lifetime value. But the kicker is this: what we've found is that members who connect with 4 other people on the app, right, at least 4, that's the magic number, will work out 41% more than when they were connected to 0 other people on the app. And what is the social connection doing? It's amplifying the impact of gamification. So gamification could be as simple as goal setting between me, myself, and I, or of course it can be going into challenges, or it can be chasing badges like what we do at MyZone with status ranking and whatnot. But amplifying it and sharing it with others means that other people are watching me. And I'm sure you'd all agree that if we did a 5K on the weekend and you're running out back through the bush and no one's watching you, you may be just running along at an easy pace. But as soon as you hit the high street and you've got your neighbors and your wife and your kids and people that you know, you are running with your knees up. We all just do more when other people are watching. And so gamification plus the socialization of that using a democratized metric is what we use as our formula to drive good things.
Great insight. Thanks, Emmett, for that. Matt, let's talk about Xbody for a moment. What I'm seeing with the clients that I work with in the US is they're reopening. It's almost an unspoken want from gym members is, now that I'm back, what's new in the club? What's new? Xbody's brand new in Australia. Not many people know about it. And it's relatively unknown as a training mechanism or training methodology. What's the best way to educate our market on EMS training? And is it a secondary revenue for our clubs?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the US market and the Australian market are just about to take off. Xbody was the first whole body EMS device to be FDA approved, and that was only at the end of 2019. So we're about to see enormous growth in the US and Australia. I think the best way to educate club owners and investors is to simply look at the potential, what's happening in Europe and Asia and in the Middle East, where EMS is just really taken off, and we've got over 5,000 clubs in those regions. It's going to take off here. It's going to come down to educating the trainers and providing good, solid education. We've got 3 master trainers here in Australia now to deliver the course from the EMS Trainer Institute. But the best way to educate the market and consumers to talk about the benefits. So the fact that it's a 20-minute workout, that it delivers the equivalent to 90 minutes of resistance training is hugely appealing to the general population. And Tony mentioned the boomer market. They have been by and large ignored, and I really think that's where the greatest potential is. It's certainly where our greatest target market lies, because we're getting massive muscle activation without putting any pressure on the joints. It's a very safe form of training. I know a lot of people are fearful of coming back to the gym and risking injury. This really attracts the 50-year-old plus and those who just want to gain the results without, I mean, I love a HIIT class, I love a spin class, but not everyone does, and they still want those great results. And that's where EMS ticks a lot of those boxes.
And EMS would be really, as I said, to drive a secondary revenue, or as Tony said, trying to get more yield from our customers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the shop-in-shop model is hugely popular in gyms overseas, in Europe. It creates a great revenue stream, and it's often delivered one-on-one or in small groups of up to 6 in a group. Clubs just generally need to dedicate about 12 to 18 square meters, depending on what group sizes you wanted to go for. And in Australia, they're charging between $50 to $90 per person per session, and generally delivering to about 3 to 4 in a group. So look, a 20-minute session scheduled every 30 to 40 minutes certainly represents a great secondary income stream. It gives your club a point of difference from your competitors as well, and it looks after that baby boomers market.
Great, thank you. Owen, let's talk about your little project that you're working on.
Small.
I believe over COVID, you gave birth to Welly.
Yeah, look, funny story. I flew to the US. We've been developing this for a few years. Flew to the US early March 2020. No idea what was going on. Wasn't watching the news seriously. It was obviously already spreading massively. I was there for a week. We launched a trial with California Family Fitness in Sacramento in the US with a very basic version of what we have now. That ran for about 2 weeks, and then all hell broke loose. So needless to say, every senior management staff member that I was dealing with to set that trial up was no longer working at that establishment. It just got shut down. What we saw, though, was that 6 months later, and this was never designed to operate outside of a gym environment, but 6 months later, we still had some of those members whose gym memberships had been frozen. They had no support and from all accounts, not a huge amount of ongoing training options. And they were still in there, setting their goals, checking in, doing some things. And we just thought, this is absolutely unbelievable.
Wow.
Now, what we did during that time was we knew we weren't going to sell to gyms when everyone was closed. And so we just had enough data to show us that this was something worth investing in. We raised a little bit more money, and we just doubled down on product development. So what we're about to launch is essentially an AI coach for gyms. It's a gym product. We sell to gyms, and they then provide to their members. And the whole concept, JT, is built around this idea that, so I was a personal trainer for 8-9 years, but PTs globally in gyms see less than 10% of all members. Not at one time, overall. So 90% of your members are not getting any one-on-one help. And then you have your group fitness, which is a whole community by itself, which is very robust and very good. But there's a lot of members that need help, and they simply are not getting that help. And the unit economics do not make sense for it to be human-led. We can't afford to have a team of 100 trainers for a 3,000 member gym looking after every single person. It doesn't work. And so Coach Welly was really born from this idea of, can we provide this one-on-one personal support at scale cost effectively? And the technology's only really gotten us to a point where this is even remotely possible in the last 3-4 years. We are pushing the boundaries in a big way. A good way to think of it is like having a proactive Siri that is really centered around the gym providing you with that solution. So imagine that you said that Siri knew that you wanted to do this many workouts a week, and that this was your calorie goal for each day, and this was your macro breakdown, and that these were the meditation sessions that you wanted to do, and these were the classes that you did at other facilities, and this was your MyZone and all sorts of stuff. And then imagine, instead of you having to ask Siri a question, Siri was waiting for signals of whether or not you were doing all of those things that you had said that you wanted to do in order to achieve this outcome. And without receiving those signals, is actually talking to you proactively. And that's essentially what we've built for gyms.
Should staff feel worried that Welly will replace them?
Yeah, we get this one a little bit. Look, the reality is, and I'm sure Ian will back me up on this, the entire premise of something like Welly is to fill the gaps that in the communication, the member support that already exist, right? These gaps, these chasms exist, but we're a long way from a virtual entity being able to replace human-to-human interaction and what that gives us. There's just something magical about human-to-human interaction, and nothing virtual is going to take that way for a very long time.
Awesome. Thank you for that summary, and very much looking forward to the next couple of weeks watching what happens. And obviously by the time we get to February, you'll have many runs on the board to be able to share at the Tech Summit when we get there in February.
Yes.
Ian, fingers crossed you'll actually get to the Tech Summit in February.
Yeah, I know.
Borders will be open and you'll be able to come down under. Maybe you could just hitch a ride with the English cricket team when they come down for the Ashes, if they come. Mate, Keep Me has been probably one of the foremost software companies collecting so much data over the last 18 months from clubs and members and inquiries. You've probably got a plethora of information to share with us. So if I gave you a blank canvas, what can you tell us?
Well, just quickly on what Owen said first and foremost, right? This whole thing about the AI aspect, Owen nailed it there, right? So what we always need to understand that when we bring automation, and automation could be as simple as your automation you're using within your engagement, you're filling gaps. What you generally find, and what we've found, this goes to answering your question in a way, JT, is when we take a look at the way organizations engage with their members, there are generally a lot more holes than they understand there to be. Very often when they sit around a table and they go through this mythical journey called the member journey, right? You find that there is a great deal of complexity and indeed sophistication in it. But when you look at the actual physical deliverables, they're very often missed. So for instance, if you had a look at, members' birthdays, if you had a look at congratulating them on milestones, these type of aspects, they normally require a plethora of systems and human intervention. What you utilize, the type of technology that Owen's trying to do and the technology that we've got, is you use it to fill those gaps, to give certainty. That certainty that the mundane is done. Because, not a newsflash for the experience level that's on here, is that this industry has made absolutely no inroads into retention for the last 20 years. Right? There's been no significant changes in any of the performance related. Retention's hard. There is no silver bullet. There's no prescribed manual for you to get it right. It comes about doing the right things consistently, regularly, without fail. And to do that, we now need to start utilizing some of the technologies available just to make sure that we get those small things right, so that we can free up the human assets, the expensive assets, and the ones which have got the real value to deliver to the member engagement side. I think from a Keep Me's perspective, Keep Me had a great deal of success in 2019, and it was very much driven towards people trying to discover where their retention challenges were, and then utilizing the tool to then go and engage with those people to try and change the outcomes. When lockdown came, the communications I had, and I spoke to every single one of the customers, including the likes of Troy over at Willows, and engaged them around what we were going to see over the next 6 months and what we needed to do to make sure that we came out stronger. And what became apparent was that the area of the business where we always give the most attention anyway, which is new member sales, was not an area that had the technology around it that gave the confidence that people were optimizing their opportunities on a regular basis. So we built the sales platform back in July. I think we launched it in September 2020. The idea being is to ensure that we're capturing every lead, regardless of where it comes in, whether it be social, whether it be web, whether it be a walk-in, and making sure that we've captured every single lead, no leakage. And then with no leakage, we're then allocating properly. And then we're understanding these leads. We're getting more intelligence about them, so our engagements can be made sure to be accurate and hopefully drive higher lifetime value from these particular ones and higher conversion levels as well. What we found between September 20 and December the 31st since we launched it was that we received our highest sales that we'd ever had in our history. It wasn't expected by myself or the board that would be the case, and that has consequently moved on. But what we have found is that organizations now are much more eager to get an understanding of transparency about where are we at the current time, where are the challenges within the business, where specifically could we take an action and have a runway to be able to measure whether it's actually having an effect. And that goes from both sales and in membership. So effectively the membership life cycle. What we've seen over the last 12 months is that organizations now understand that they need to have consistent engagement plans. They need to have a thorough understanding of what would be expected from a member to progress as the stage by stage. But I think just as importantly, and more importantly in many respects, we're now at a stage where we need to make sure every engagement we made is of a personalized nature, has the capacity beyond just referencing their name to reference other aspects. Now, we want to talk about numbers, and Willows has been brought up, so let's use Willows in there. Since Willows has adopted this type of technology, their lifetime value on their membership has gone up by 1 year, right? So they've had a 1-year LTV increase. They've never had a higher level of engagement in their communications ever, 85 to 90% engaged in that aspect. They lost all of their members during the initial period, as you all know. Every single one of them came back at the end of that. And this is down to the Willows and the product that they have as well. But just as importantly, increase in 1-year LTV, increase in referral traffic, and very importantly, highest level of non-dues secondary spend ever. Now, Keep Me obviously plays a large part in giving the insights for Troy and the team to take the action, but there'll be an element of halo effect there. They've got the confidence to engage, they've got the data that's available, which allows them to form these plans to actually go out and execute. And I think the big difference between now and maybe 2 years ago was that organizations didn't have the tools available to be able to make these informed decisions with confidence to then go out there and attack them. And I think because they have, that's why we're starting to see the results that they get.
Great insight to Keep Me, Ian. Thank you for sharing that. And thanks everybody for sharing kind of how your technology will have an impact on our business. Now, I've got one final question before I let you go. And it's this. You all are across so much different technology in our industry, probably whether it's industry specific or even outside the industry, but you're all across tech in different ways, shapes or forms. So what would be 3 pieces of tech that you think every club, other than your own technology, what tech should people be looking at right now to move their businesses forward? And let's start with you.
That's a relatively tough one there, because it's like, gonna have to say my zone, whether I like it or not. My zone, right?
You say my zone, and I'll say Keep Me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know what? I do love a bit of EMS myself. How about you guys? Right? So, somewhat challenged on that aspect. Listen, I'm gonna stay generic rather than go to thing. I'm gonna keep it quick based on the time. What I would love everybody to understand is that your consumers are now walking around with more wearables than ever. Apple's the largest watch manufacturer in the world, right? We know for a fact that we've now got a stage where people have got more physiological information carried on them than anywhere else. we as operators need to signal to them that we understand that, we comprehend that, we understand that the reason they bought them was because they want to get better at their health. With that being the case, we as organizations need to make sure that we're signaling so that we can help them understand that tech, utilize that tech, because it is that tech which is going to build that additional bridge between the member and the organization. And MyZones obviously is the pioneer in this particular area, and it is an area which I think that when you get right, has the ability to move your relationship with the member from inside the walls to outside of the walls as well. And when you do that, you change your relationship from just being a provider of bricks and mortar and equipment to actually being the temple of fitness, the temple of wealth. And I think that's a very critical aspect on there. I myself, I have to admit, I do have an EMS machine. I also have my MyZone, Apple Watch, I have my Whoop, I have my Garmin, and I have a graveyard in a cupboard just over there, which is what my wife calls of every single tech implement that's ever come. And that's not going to change anytime soon.
Owen, what tech do you think we should be looking at?
I'm going to flip the trend here, JT, and actually suggest that looking at tech solutions without understanding what you're trying to achieve and a bit of a roadmap of how to get there is absolutely the wrong way to go about it. So what I would say is don't worry about what tech's out there. First, look at a digital strategy. Understand what you are trying to achieve. Every gym has slightly different perspective on their operating model, on their core KPIs, how they want to try and drive revenue and all sorts of things, right? How big they are, how small they are. So understand what your objectives are and how a digital strategy can impact achieving those objectives. Map out the data and the technology that you think will help you achieve those objectives. Maybe get in some external resources if you struggle at this as a business, right? Map it out and figure out what is the data that's going to help us provide a better user experience to gain better member value and engagement. Is it that we need to get the data off their Apple Watch? How are we going to do that? Map a bit of that out because it's not rocket science. It just takes a bit of time and a bit of thought. And then finally, once you've got that, then you're in a position to start exploring the technology that's available to solve those problems.
Gosh, Owen, you're probably talking like some sort of analog system like a whiteboard and markers to map that out.
You would not believe the technology required to do this.
I love that.
It has to be done on Google Sheets.
Now, speaking of analog and whiteboards, Tony, what tech for you? Is there any tech, or are you going the same route that Owen was talking about?
Well, Justin, we know each other well, and you know that I'm about the most low-tech person by a long shot in the group. But I will say, I'm going to start from a different position. Number one expense in any club is what? Labor,
Labor.
Yeah. So how do you, and typically clubs are, let's call it more high touch. You get touched a lot when you sign, well, you don't get touched a lot because you get enticed to sign up. Generally, traditional sales is done face-to-face. Traditional fitness is being delivered by our instructors face-to-face. Traditional on the floor is we have been typically a high-touch business. Now, how do you incorporate tech? Obviously, as we are embarking on this interesting concept called Club W, and today I was on the phone with my head operations lady, it blows my mind. I said to her, I shook my head again today, how we are going full circle into full tech sign-up capacity. And we're using technology that's actually outside of the industry. We're using, would you believe, co-working technology. It's a long story. So as we are trying to blend high tech with high touch, we hear that a lot. We talk about tech-enhanced wellness. Now, I won't elaborate on that. Oh, and you have a welly, we have something called a wello. We have trademarked the word wello. And what we've done is we're replacing the smoko with the wello. It used to be we'd have smoking breaks back in the 90s. We stuck out to have a smoko. Now we're encouraging people to duck out and have a wello. Again, I won't elaborate on that other than it's all to do with tech.
Your marketing team and my team should get together.
Yeah, for sure. So, tech-enhanced business and in many forms, and I don't know specifically which Apple Watch and what type of tracking technology. I've actually had a MyZone strap on once in my life and couldn't figure it out, so I took it off. Nothing to do with the strap, it was just me. So, but I know tech it's that balance of tech and touch, but increasingly tech. I'll finish up by there is one club group in the world and they are about to become the largest private, when I say privately owned, the largest group that's not a franchise group. And they will be the first ones to hit 1,000 clubs, which when I spoke to the founder and owner of this week, he said we'll hit 1,000 by the end of the year. They opened 60 clubs last month while most of the area they're in was still shut down. They have a club, now they've gone to the other extreme, that they have now gone to 0 staff, 0, 0, 0. And what club group is that, ladies and gentlemen? Ian, you should know. Basic Fit is the one. Fascinating what they've done, but that's one extreme. And how they've done it is fascinating, but it's all tech. I'm not saying that's the absolute answer, but just a lot of interesting things to think about.
Tony, I'm sure we can help you out with MyZone. We could just switch you up here with something that just goes around your wrist. We
I know a guy. I know a guy.
I never got one of those, JT.
Emma
didn't send me one.
You know, this is my thing. This is my digital calendar. See this thing here? Digital calendar.
I love it.
You know, I still personally live in the old world, but I believe that the new world of tech is where it's at, and I have to embrace it. And I am
Matt, let's go to you. Other than putting EMS in, what other pieces of tech do you think we should be looking at as club owners?
Yeah, well, look, I'll flip the question around as well and concentrate on that 85% of the population that's not joining the gym. And I think club owners need to think about why. And it's generally because they're either time poor and it's not convenient, or they haven't seen results or been rewarded by their MyZone watch after doing 3 bicep curls. So the key is to find the answer is to unlock that 85%. Whatever your unique offering is, whatever technology you're taking on board, it's going to have to overcome those objections to joining the club in the first place. And I guess I would, separate it into 2 large areas. The first thing I'd do is look at a virtual group fitness solution inside a club. Most clubs have lost talent on the group fitness stage. And virtual group fitness certainly ticks a lot of boxes. It saves on wages, it acts as a safety net for talent shortages, and it bridges that gap between at-home fitness and live classes. So I think it has a lot to offer. And the other area is, wellness technologies in general. I would really look at, what's out there to attract that 85%. Is it saunas, massage chairs, oxygen chairs, cryo chambers, you name it? There's plenty of improvements in that space and people love it. So look at what you can do to improve your overall wellness and feel good offerings.
Nice. Lovely. Emmett?
Yeah, JT, let me pick up on what Owen said about working out what your objective is. Because your question, JT, what 3 technologies? It's basically an innovation question or an R&D question, and operators typically don't do R&D. What I think operators should do is look at suppliers as their R&D department, and then the job of the operator is to do this. Work out what their strategic anchors are, to Owen's point. Work out, is member engagement key to us? Is this how we differentiate? And if it is, then work with a task force of management or even middle management to say, you know what, let's go out every single Friday and each of you need to connect with a vendor or a supplier, and you need to learn about their product. If they're claiming it's got something to do with member engagement, get on a call for 45 minutes, create a 1-page executive summary and feed that back up into management so that you are looking at all the alternatives out there. The thing about decision-making is poor decision-making doesn't come down to selecting the wrong option. Poor decision-making comes down to not having all the options on the table. So think of it like panning for gold. You can't just walk up to a riverbed and pull a piece of gold out of it. You need to get rubble on the pan and shake it around and go through all the crap, and then you find the gold. It's the same thing with innovation and R&D. So I would systemize it, operationalize it, and have your staff help you with it, bubble it all up. And if it is consistent with one of your anchors, then pilot it and go from there. My second point will be that when we incorporated at MyZone back in 2011, Fitbit was a baby, believe it or not, when we incorporated. They had done $8 million worth of revenue that year. They were not very big at all, but there was a catalyst, and the catalyst was the cloud, and also Bluetooth. So all of a sudden that pedometer went from a manual USB upload through a laptop into this seamless experience. And that helped create the space, that catalyst at least helped create the space for wearable technology. And that was helpful for us. And we've been in the business of gamification and challenges like we've spoken about. But our next 10 years will be about working with other data points, right? So marrying up MyZone data with other data points to be predictive, right? And then to operationalize, if you will, that predictive insight and communicate. So yes, it speaks to Keep Me. Yes, it speaks to Wally. So if I was an operator, I'd be on the phone with everyone here, but also I'd go to the Filex list and whatever other list you've got and get them all on a call and learn about what they're doing and then make your assessment.
That's really taking due diligence to the next level, isn't it?
It is. It's exactly what it is. Thoroughness.
Love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've been entertained, educated, and informed by 5 different perspectives on what you need to be doing in relation to looking at tech. I just got one final question. I thought I'd slip in one final question, and that's this. In less than a minute for each one of you, obviously the first thing they need to do, people that are watching, because I'm a big one for actions. This has been interesting, informative, educational, but we need some actions out of it. The first thing they should do is look at your respective websites. The second thing, what's the second thing people should do when they finish this webinar in the next 3 minutes? Matt, what would be what's the number 2 thing they need to do after checking out your website?
Well, reach out and get in touch, because I mean, I can talk about EMS all day, but until you've suited up in an X-Body suit and experienced what that muscle engagement feels like, you won't truly appreciate all the many applications that EMS has to offer. Have a look at what's out there in the market globally, around the world, and you'll see what's about to come to Australia.
Nice one. Owen?
Look, Ian's going to enjoy this, but I'd actually say get one of Ian's team to run you through the sales presentation, because what you will learn from that, whether you choose Keep Me or not, you'll learn a lot about how the data of your business could be used.
Nice. Well, then let's go to Tony.
I think you have to accept that the only thing constant in life is change. And you have to look at, have a look at what we have on our wellnesssolutions.com.au and take a glimpse into the future. And if you want to embrace the other 80%, you need to take a step. And you can, I think Matt talked about, the different chronotherapies, and whether it be putting in a couple of infrared saunas, which, by the way, and we'll use that same person we've been picking on all day, being Troy at Willows, call him up and say, tell us what your return was on the infrared sauna you put in from Wellness Solutions, and he'll tell you something like 6 weeks and he got his money back, because he monetizes it. Now you can do it differently. You can create the other profit center. We touched on the fact about having a second tier on your memberships, which a lot of people don't have. Or if you have 2 tiers, add a 3rd tier. Do what Planet Fitness is a reason these guys are, enormously successful. They're called a budget operator, but they have a black card membership that is way above their budget. They sell 70% of their members in Australia buy that 60% higher membership. And it's a series of wellness pods. There is huge fruit to be had in this industry. You just need to sort of explore it and accept change is there.
Emmett, what's the second thing I've got to do after checking out MyZone?
Right, so to be consistent with what I was saying about getting your team to create an R&D task force, what I'd also do is not only get them to do the work, but make sure that you consistently go out and get away from the business. I'm not talking about off-sites. I'm talking about going for a walk or going for lunch on the 4th Friday of every month and talking big picture. JD Rockefeller, one of the most wealthiest men in the history of the globe, right? The guy behind Standard Oil and others, that was the secret to his success. And he made sure that his executives all lived in the same suburbs so they could walk together to work. So on the walk to work and the walk home, they could talk big picture and throw around ideas. That's what we need to do more of. We all get stuck in the business. We need to come out of it, throw ideas around, do the research with the R&D task force, speak to everyone on this call, speak to others, and then make your assessment.
John D. Rockefeller. Make sure you buy the book, Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, where he talks about all of the habits of John D. Rockefeller and why he was so successful.
Yeah.
Ian, you get the final word, sir.
Well, okay. Now, well, I'll make it a simple one. So people often want to understand how it is that they could utilize AI and machine learning to the benefit of the business very, very quickly. So here's the way I normally tell them to do it. Take a look at your monthly operational report or your quarterly report, however you measure yourself on a performance basis at the current time. In all probability, this is logically going to be historical. You're going to be looking at how things have happened. But by doing so, you've been recording the data over a long period of time. So from that data, how powerful would it be if you could then look at those same metrics on a forward basis? How powerful would it be if you could take a look at your sales figures, your retention figures, your likely channel performance figures, your non-dues, secondary dues figures over a prolonged period of time looking forward? So take a look at your performance report that you currently have, and then understand how it would change your behaviors if you could look over the next 3 to 6 months with a highly accurate prediction of what they would likely to be. That is something which is attainable and possible with the technology that's available.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. My phone has been lit up with people sending text messages to me saying how informative this has been. This panel has been phenomenal.